All right. Hello and welcome to Morning Coffee with attorney Janine Brodnix. And today I have a guest with me, attorney Leo Lastre. Say hello, Leo.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leo Lastre. Um, Thank you, Janine, for having me. It's wonderful to be here with Steps and to spend some time with you.
Good. So today we are going to do a probate overview. So what we're talking about is probate. What is probate? Essentially, probate is a legal proceeding that allows the court to oversee the distribution of a deceased person's assets. And that is according to a will. And if you don't have a will, then it'll go according to the state's law. So having a will is important. It is a good place to start off with the probate because the judge is allowed to review the will and distribute whatever the assets are according to the will. Leo, what is your thoughts on having a will or not having a will and go into probate?
Right, testate. Right, if somebody actually has a testament of what they want to happen when they're after they've transitioned, Lord forbid. Um, I think that's a fair statement. Although it's very actually absolutely accurate. As we've talked about before, I like to sometimes state it very plainly. Um, it's going to go to court if probate is the court proceedings that you'll have to go to if you don't have a trust in place, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it is good that the court oversees a will proceedings or many other nuances. uh, I think is an important part of our court, but sometimes if you can avoid it through estate planning, it's a great thing to do. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So, like I said, as Leo just said, when you have a will, it's called a testate estate because there's a testament in the will. And if you do not have a will, it's called an intestate estate. And so, what that means is it'll go according, your assets will pass according to the state's law. So, Illinois has a law where, whichever state you're from, there's a statute which designates how your assets will be passed out. And, the thing with that is, that may not be the way you would want your assets to be distributed. For one, the statute does not take in consideration any type of blended family. So if you've remarried and there are stepchildren and that there was not, a full adoption, those things are not necessarily taken in consideration. So that's one thing that, stands out to me. Leo, what do you think in that regards of, how it can work out as not, being intestate?
Right, you're absolutely right. When you have a written document expressing your wishes, that can trump the statute, which does not take into consideration non-traditional families. Um, Even the concept, and I don't want to get too legalese here, or go down the path of our war stories, but equitable adoption. Often, people in certain communities, people in my community, I happen to be Hispanic, and we might call people relatives. We might have affectionate terms for them, but they're not recognized by the law as relatives, and that can be very troubling once one's transition, once one has died. Do not expect the courts to be sympathetic to your cultural expectations. So writing it down really makes a big difference. And writing it down with help of an attorney is the proper way to do it. At least you've tried, and whether it's the form of a will or a trust, yeah, that's the big difference between testate and intestate estates.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a very good point. I have had many of clients where a person has died, and so that's the only mom or that's the only father that they know. But without there being a legal adoption or some type of paperwork there, that it's very hard to prove to the court that you are the person who should be receiving those assets. It would, but however, if there was a will, then the court would just go according to that will. So right there, the great example. Leo, thanks for sharing that. But probate is a process. There are steps, to probate. One thing that happens in probate is that there is notice given to creditors, and so creditors are put on notice that the person has died. And so, of course, if there is outstanding debts, there's opportunity for, creditors to come forward. And so at that point, the court, will evaluate that and give them the opportunity to collect if there are enough assets in the estate there. So that is definitely a part of the probate process. And so, there is a period, there's a 6-month period that creditors have once it's been published, to come forward. So have you had any issues with creditors coming forth on your cases, Leo, in probate?
Absolutely. And I think, and also being a claimant, I mean, I have had issues where I have had to appear and pursue claims against the states. Not to move away from the ideas of wills, but one of the things that people do to avoid probate court is set up trust to protect the assets from creditors. And that's a whole nother video, I'm sure. And I also want to bring up, and before we just talked about this briefly, I believe, before we had the pleasure of the video, and our guests in the virtual world, knowing where the will is a big issue. So if you don't have that will secured beforehand, you might as well be in an intestate proceeding. But yes, back to the question of claims. It's a concern because you have to make sure there's enough assets in the estate to cover these claims. And if you're the claimant, you're on the flip side, you better hope what class of claim. You have to start looking at issues of what class of claimant are you? And are you actually in a good position to prove up your claim? I hope that's responsive.
Yes, and you definitely brought up a very good point of where is the will. Unfortunately, people, they'll meet with their attorney, they'll have the will done, and they're so concerned about, if someone will know, if someone will be upset. And so they don't share the information. And so no one knows where the will is. And so then at their death, either the person who finds the will is the one where they're not happy with what the will says. So unfortunately, they may, let's just say, make the will disappear, or that the will just can't be located because, people, they don't do a good job of, going through other assets. And so if you have a will and no one knows that you have the will, then as Leo said, it's like you don't have a will. And so your estate will be intestate and will follow according to the law. So it's very important that you have your will and that, someone, even if it's not necessarily a family member, even if it's a friend, but someone who you feel that at the time, of course you don't know, no one knows what the future may hold, but the fact that you have put it out there so that someone else knows that it exists and actually has a copy of it, that is very helpful. And of course, for my regular viewers of Morning Coffee, we're always talking about the importance of estate planning, doing your wills, talking with your attorney about, the trust. And so as we have discussed, previously, there are different estate planning mechanisms that you can use to avoid probate, and that remains true. However, as we're talking in this video, that if you do not avoid probate and have to go through probate, you still want to give the court a roadmap. And so with that, we're going to kind of wrap things up. I'm going to thank Leo for coming. We want to keep this brief, but we will do more. There's definitely more things to talk about with probate. It's a court process. And so as you can imagine, lots of things can happen in court, but I will give the mic back to Leo to give some closing remarks.
I want to thank you, Janine, for letting me be part of your coffee talk, so to speak. And I want to commend you for opening up the dialogue. I think folks don't often have the vocabulary to speak about this challenging topic, even among their family members. So congratulations for you to bringing it up. Even the word probate, don't be intimidated by it. It just means proving it up, right? Proving up the will, proving up the intent. But talk about it with your family, not just lawyers, because at some point it's going to be talked about. So thank you.
Thank you.